March 14th, 1853. St. Helena Parish, Louisiana. A pregnant woman sold for 12 cents. Not $12. 12 cents the cost of a stale loaf of bread. The courthouse square in Greensburg smelled of wet clay, horse sweat, and the faint rot of Spanish moss hanging so thick from the live oaks that sunlight bled through in thin, reluctant needles. 40 people had gathered under a sky the color of old pewter. Most were there for mules or furniture. A few came for human flesh. On the steps stood Nathaniel Pugh, parish recorder, voice flat as a ledger, female, approximately 23 years. How is trained. Currently with child. Minimum bid. 12 cents. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. 12 cents. In 1853, a healthy woman of childbearing age fetched $800 to $1,200. 12 cents meant something was wrong. Disease, madness, damage. No sane buyer would risk it. Silas Guthrie, overseer of Bellamont Plantation, stood near the front, hat low, waiting. This was his moment. Duncan Fairholm had arranged it perfectly. Undervalue her, scare off bidders, let Guthrie claim her for pennies. A quiet, legal humiliation. A message to his brother William. Love is weakness, and weakness costs more than money. But then a stranger raised his hand from the back. 12 cents. Every head turned. The man was tall, thin, road-dusted, coat hanging off him like it belonged to someone else, face weathered, eyes steady. He didn't look like a planter. He didn't look like a trader. He looked like someone who had walked a long way to be exactly here. Nathaniel Pugh blinked. Your name, sir? Isaiah Mercer. Pugh glanced at Guthrie! Guthrie's jaw tightened. This wasn't the plan. You have 12 cents, Mr. Mercer. Mercer stepped forward, reached into his pocket, and placed 12 copper pennies on the podium with deliberate calm. They clinked like tiny accusations. From the courthouse doorway, Judge Amos Crenshaw watched, arms folded, expression unreadable. He had come to ensure the transaction stayed clean. Duncan had made that clear. Silas Guthrie spoke through clenched teeth. 13 cents. Mercer didn't hesitate. The crowd leaned in. This was no longer routine. 50. Guthrie snapped. $71. 5. The bidding climbed $10.20 until Guthrie stopped cold at 10. Duncan's instructions had been explicit. Do not overpay. Do not draw eyes. But now, eyes were everywhere. $10. One Spute called, voice cracking slightly. $10 twice. He looked toward the judge. Crenshaw gave the smallest nod. Sold to Mr. Isaiah Mercer for $10. Clara, hands bound, pregnancy visible under her thin dress, stood to the side of the steps the entire time. She had not spoken. She had barely breathed. But when Mercer turned to lead her away, their eyes met. And in that single second, Clara saw something that made her stomach drop. Recognition. Not the cold appraisal of a buyer, not the hunger of a man like Guthrie. This stranger knew her. Duncan Fairholm emerged from the courthouse shadows, where he had watched through a window. His voice cut across the square like a whip. Mr. Mercer. A moment. Mercer stopped. He did not release Claraara's arm. Duncan approached, boots still abrade on the dirt. You are not from this parish. I am not. What brings you to St. Helena? Businesses? Duncan's smile was thin. What sort? My own sort. Ah, long beat. Duncan searched the stranger's face, trying to place him. The auction had been rigged, controlled, predictable. This outcome was neither. What do you intend to do with property you bought so cheaply? That is my business, Mr. Fairholm. Good day. Mercer turned. Claraara walked beside him toward a waiting wagon, canvas covered. Horse already restless, Duncan watched them go, fists clenched at his sides. For the first time in years, something had slipped his grasp. Inside the wagon, Mercer helped Claraara climb in. His touch was careful, not rough. He took the driver's bench, flicked the reins. The horse moved forward. Greensburg fell away behind them whitewashed buildings. Church, steeple, the boundary where fields gave way to pine forest. Only when the town was out of sight did Mercer speak. "You don't remember me." Claraara's voice was low, wary. "Should I?" Richmond. August, 1845. "You were 15. I was there. The day you were sold." Her blood turned to ice. "You were at the auction. I drove the wagons for Ephraim Dalton, the trader. I watched your mother scream when they tore you away. I watched Edmund Fairholm pay $700 and lead you off. I told myself I was just doing a job." Claraara's hand moved, instinctively, to the small knife sewn into her Hembethi's gift. Mercy, not defense. "Then you are no different from the rest of them." "I was no different," Mercer said quietly. "I am no longer that man." He reached into his coat and handed her a folded paper without looking back. "Read it." She unfolded it with trembling fingers. A deed of manumission. Her name Claraara, no surname. Description matching her age. The burn scar on her left forearm. Space at the bottom for the owner's signature. Isaiah Mercer's signature. "I don't understand," she whispered. 8 years ago, I watched your family destroyed on that block," he said. "I carried that shame to Cincinnati. I worked with people trying to dismantle what I helped build. 3 months ago, a man came to us, William Fair. He told us about a woman carrying his child. He told us his brother was going to sell her to an overseer known for breaking women. He gave us the date, the place. He asked if anyone could help." Claraara's hand drifted to her stomach. "William sent you. He paid me. Not to buy you, to bring you north, to a safe house in Illinois, to freedom." Freedom. The word tasted like ash and hope at the same time. "Where is William now?" Mercer's silence was answer enough. "He died 2 weeks ago. Fever, they said. In Kentucky, trying to arrange passage for others." Clara closed her eyes. Duncan had found him. Of course Duncan had found him. The wagon rattled on. The forest closed around them, and Claraara's mind turned, sharp and cold, to the one truth she could not shake. This rescue felt too perfect. Too timed, too clean. Duncan Fairholm did not make mistakes. And if Duncan had allowed this to happen, then this was not escape. This was the next move in his game. The wagon rattled north, through the pine-thick Louisiana afternoon, wheels sinking into ruts, left by winter rains. Spanish moss draped the trees like funeral veils, turning the light green and dim. Claraara sat in the back, knees drawn up, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly, the other curled around the knife hidden in her hem. Isaiah Mercer drove, without looking back, reins loose in his hands, posture deceptively relaxed. He had been talking for miles calm, practiced, explanations of the route ahead, avoid main roads. Travel at night, safe houses run by free black families and Quaker sympathizers. A crossing into Illinois where abolitionists would hide her until the child came. Then farther north, or west, or wherever the network could take her. Every word sounded right. Every detail fit. And that was exactly why Claraara's skin crawled. She had survived 8 years at Bellamont by learning one unbreakable rule. When something feels too perfect, it is never perfect. Duncan Fairholm did not lose control. He orchestrated, he anticipated. He turned other people's hope into his weapon. Mercer glanced over his shoulder. You're quiet. I am thinking, she said. About what comes next. About what already happened. He nodded, as if he expected that. You still don't trust me. I trust what I see. And what I see is a man who appeared exactly when he needed to, bid exactly the right amount, outmaneuvered Silas Guthrie without breaking a sweat, and now drives me into deep woods with no one to witness anything that happens here. Mercer let out a slow breath. Fair enough. They rode in silence. Another mile. The road narrowed, trees pressing closer until branches scraped the canvas, like fingers testing for weakness. Clara spoke again, voice low. Duncan wanted me with Guthrie. He set the price at 12 cents to make sure no one else bid. So why did you bid? Because William asked me to. And William is dead. Yes. Convenient timing. Mercer's shoulders stiffened. You think I killed him? I think Duncan did, or paid someone to. And I think you know more than you've said. The wagon hit a root. Claraara braced herself against the sideboard. Mercer slowed the horse, then stopped entirely. In a small clearing half hidden by underbrush, he tied the reins, climbed down, and faced her through the open back. You want the truth? He asked. I want all of it. He leaned against the wagwar, arms crossed. William came to Cincinnati 3 months ago. He was half mad with guilt. Told us about you, about the child, about Duncan's plan to sell you to Guthrie. He had money's inheritance and he gave us every dollar to get someone south. I volunteered. I knew Louisiana. I knew the roads. I knew how auctions worked. Claraara studied his face, and Duncan knew you were coming. Mercer didn't flinch. Yes. How? Someone talked. Maybe in Cincinnati. Maybe one of William's letters was intercepted. Doesn't matter now. Duncan found out. He didn't stop the auction. He changed it, made the trap bigger. Claraara felt the knife's handle press against her palm. So this is still his plan. Part of it is, she laughed once, bitter and short. Then why are you telling me? Because the part that isn't his plan is the part where you live. He reached into his coat and pulled out the leather pouch he'd shown her before, $150 in coins. The letter of introduction to Natchez. He tossed it into her lap. North is what Duncan expects, he said. He has men waiting, slave catchers, with warrants signed by Crenshaw. They'll intercept us tomorrow afternoon, 20 miles up this road. They'll have papers declaring you a fugitive. They'll drag you back to Bella, and they'll make sure William's rescue becomes the reason you suffer worse than if you'd gone quietly. Claraara opened the pouch. Gold glinted in the dim light. Real, heavy, and south. She asked, Natchez first, then New Orleans, then a ship to Mexico. Veracruz has a community of runaways, people who look like you, speak Spanish, disappear, into markets and docks. Duncan's reach stops at the border. He can't follow you there without starting a diplomatic incident. She closed the pouch. And you, I continue north with someone else in this wagon. Who? Luz Shambasa. She lives 8 miles south of here. Free woman of color. Dying of consumption. Thin enough. Dark enough. Your height. From a distance. In a bonnet and shawl. She'll pass for you long enough. Claraara stared at him. You're asking a dying woman to take my place? I'm not asking. She already agreed. Her family needs the money. Her children need land. She has weeks left, maybe days. This way, her death buys something more than a grave. Claraara's throat tightened. She dies for me. She dies on her terms. Consumption will take her anyway. This gives her a purpose, a story her children can carry instead of just grief. Claraara looked down at the knife in her hand, then at the pouch. Zain eti miraserun. And when they realize she's not me, they won't have time to do much. Ruth will make sure of that. How? Mercer's voice dropped. She has laudanum, enough to take when the men appear. She'll be gone before they can question her properly. No confession, no proof of deception. Just a dying woman who died in transit. Duncan gets nothing, no satisfaction. Nobody to punish, no message to William's ghost. Just failure. Claraara closed her eyes. The weight of it settled on her chest like river silt. A stranger's life traded for hers. A child she'd never meet. Growing up knowing their mother chose death to give a stranger freedom. She opened her eyes. I want to meet her. That's not safe. I don't care. Mercer studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Dawn tomorrow. 15 minutes. No more. He climbed back onto the bench, flicked the reins. The wagon lurched forward again. Claraara sat in the swaying dark, fingers tracing the scar on her forearm, the burn from childhood that had marked her since before she could remember pain. She thought of her mother's scream in Richmond. She thought of William's promises, whispered in the overseer's cottage. She thought of Bethy pressing the knife into her hand. And she thought of Ruth Chambers, a woman she had never met, who had already decided to die so that Claraara might live. The forest closed tighter around them. Somewhere ahead, the trap waited. But for the first time in 8 years, Claraara felt something sharper than fear. Determination that if Duncan wanted a hunt, she would give him one. And this time, she would not be the prey. Dawn broke gray and reluctant over the hidden settlement south of the road, the cabins rough-hewn, smoke-black hand huddled together like people afraid to be seen. No church steeple, no courthouse, just 30 souls living in the cracks the law forgot to fill. Free black families, mostly. A few poor whites who had long stopped caring about color when hunger came calling. Claraara walked the narrow path Mercer had pointed out. Bundle of clothes under one arm, leather pouch heavy in her skirt pocket. The knife stayed sewn in her hem close. Cold, ready. She had not slept. Every creak of the wagon through the night had sounded like hooves closing in. Mercer waited outside the smallest cabin. He looked older in the pale light line steeper around his eyes, shoulders carrying more than just the weight of a coat. 15 minutes, he said. No more. Claraara nodded once and stepped inside. The cabin smelled of sage smoke and sickness. One small window let in weak light that caught the dust motes like floating ash. Ruth Chambers lay on a narrow cot, blanket pulled to her chin. She was thinner than Claraara, had imagined bones sharp under skin the color of old parchment, eyes fever bright but steady. Booth looked up. No surprise. Only recognition. You're the one, she whispered, voiced like dry leaves. Kurararaku nerto, beside the cot. Claraara, Ruth's lips curved a ghost of a smile. They said you were worth saving. I wanted to see if that was true. Claraara took Ruth's hand. The fingers were cool, fragile as bird bones. I don't know if anyone is worth what you're giving. Nobody is worth a life, Ruth said, but that's not why I said yes. My children need what Mr. Mercer paid. My sister will take them. The money buys land enough to grow food, not just beg for scraps. I'm dying. Anyway, consumption don't negotiate. If I got to go, I'd rather go doing something that matters. Claraara's throat closed. Your children. How many? 3, 4, 2, 12. They'll remember that Mama chose something bigger than pain. I'll remember you, Claraara said. I'll tell my child about Ruth Chambers, about the woman who gave her life so we could have ours. Ruth's eyes softened. Names don't matter much where I'm going, but if it comforts you, keep it. Just make sure you live. Make sure that baby lives. Don't let me trade my death for nothing. I won't, Claraara promised. Whatever it takes. Ruth squeezed her hand, weak but deliberate. One more thing. When they take me tomorrow, when Duncan's men see, ain't you? They'll be angry. Might say cruel things. Might threaten. But they won't hurt me. How can you be sure? Ruth's smile returned fiercer. This time, because I'll already be dead. Claraara Flosier Ruth lifted a small brown bottle from under the blanket. Laudanum. Enough to ease pain, or end it. I'll take too much, Ruth said. When I see them coming, when Porter rides up with his papers and his rifle, I'll swallow it all. By the time they pull me from the wagon, I'll be gone. No questions. No torture. No confession. Just a dying woman who passed in transit. Duncan gets nothing, no proof, no satisfaction. Just a cold body and a failed plan. Claraara stared at the bottle. You're choosing the exact moment. I'm choosing my terms, Ruth corrected. Consumption will take me in weeks anyway. Slow. Painful. This way, I decide. This way, my death breaks something bigger than me. Claraara felt tears burn but refused them. Tears were weakness in Bellamont. Weakness got noticed. Noticed got punished. She leaned closer. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, Ruth whispered, live. Raise that child free. Tell her one day there was a woman named Ruth who looked at death and said, not yet, not till I say so. That's enough. Claraara pressed her forehead to Ruth's hand for a long moment. Then she stood. Ruth's eyes followed her to the door. Go now, before I start coughing and ruin the moment. Clara paused at the threshold. I'll carry you with me, always. Ruth closed her eyes. Good. Now, get. Outside, Mercer waited. He handed Claraara a small map hand-drawn. Routes marked in charcoal. Safe houses circled. Path behind the cabin leads south 3 miles to a road. Follow west to the Black Swan Tavern. Ask for Marcus. Say, Isaiah sent me. He'll know the rest. Claraara tucked the map into her skirt. And you? I go north with Ruth. Deliver her to the interception. Play a confused buyer. Filed a report with Crenshaw claiming the property died en route. Duncan will rage, but he'll have no proof, no body to punish, no trail to follow. He'll hunt you. Let him try. Claraara looked back at the cabin once. Ruth's silhouette was visible through the oiled paper small, still, already fading. Mercer followed her gaze. She's ready. She chose this. Claraara nodded. Then she turned south without another word. The forest swallowed her quickly. Pine needles, soft underfoot. Sunlight fractured through branches. She walked, fast, steady, not panicked. Every step farther from Bellamont felt like peeling off skin she hadn't known was burning. Behind her, Mercer hitched the wagon. Ruth was helped into the back shawl, bonnet, pregnancy pillow of rags to mimic the swell. From 50 yards away, in motion, she would pass. Close up. The lie would hold only long enough. Claraara did not look back. Looking back made the leaving harder. She reached the road by turned west. The Black Swan Tavern appeared a dusk-a-low building, lantern light leaking from cracks. Marcus met her at the door. No questions, just a nod when she said the words. Isaiah sent me. He led her to a back room. A hot meal, a pallet, a whispered promise. Boat leaves New Orleans in 5 days. You'll be on it. Claraara ate. She slept fitfully, and in her dreams, she saw Ruth smiling through bloodied teeth, whispering, gone. Beyond his reach, 20 miles north, Isaiah Mercer drove the wagon toward the trap. Ruth sat upright, bonnet low, breathing shallow. The bottle rested in her lap. Lautna measured to the drop. She had chosen her moment. And when the four riders appeared on the Rhodahedra Falls glinting, papers ready, she lifted the bottle to her lips. She smiled once. Then she drank. The road north from the settlement was little more than 2 wagon ruts, carved through pine and red clay. By early afternoon, the sun had burned off the morning haze, turning the air thick and golden. Isaiah Mercer kept the horse at a steady walk, never hurried, never slow. Panic would give him away. Ruth Chambers sat in the back, bonnet low, shawl wrapped tight despite the heat. The pregnancy pillow of rags shifted slightly with each jolt, but from 20 yards, it looked real enough. She held the small brown bottle in her lap like a secret prayer. Her breathing was shallow, deliberate. She had already measured the dose twice that morning. Mercer spoke without turning. They'll come soon. 4 riders? Porter leads them. Stay still. Don't speak unless they force it. Ruth's voice was a rasp. I know the plan. He glanced back once. Her eyes were clear, fever bright, but focused. You sure? About the timing? I swallow when I see the rifles, she said, before they pull me down. I'll be gone before questions start. Mercer nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Ruth whispered. Thank me. When she's free. They rounded a bend ahead. 4 horsemen waited in the middle of the road, rifles across saddles, hats low against the sun. Porter in front, broad-shouldered, scarred cheek, papers rolled in his fist like a warrant from God. 3 others flanked him, hard men, faces blank with the boredom of routine cruelty. Mercer slowed the wagon. The horse snorted, sensing tension. Porter raised a hand. Isaiah Mercer. That's me. We have a warrant for fugitive property. Negro woman named absconded from Bellamont's plantation. We believe she's in your possession. Mercer kept his voice even. I purchased that woman legally at auction in Greensburg. I have the deed. Porter unrolled the papers. Deed was obtained under false pretenses. Judge Crenshaw voided it this morning. She's to be returned to her rightful owner. Mercer shrugged. Show me the voidance. Porter tossed the document. Mercer caught it, scanned the signature. Crenshaw's flourish, unmistakable. Liga. Clean Duncan's hand, everywhere. Step down, Porter said. We'll take her now. Mercer climbed from the bench slowly. He walked to the back, pulled. Aside, the canvas. Ruth looked up, face gaunt, eyes half-lidded, bonnet shadowing her features. From this angle, in motion, she could pass. Porter dismounted. His men followed. One James Ridley hung back, studying Ruth with the practiced eye of a man who had hunted hundreds. This, her? Porter asked. Mercer nodded. She's ill. Caught consumption on the road. That's why I was bringing her south, too sick to travel north. Porter stepped closer. Make her stand. Mercer helped Ruth to her feet. She swayed. One hand braced on the wagon side. The pregnancy pillow shifted under the shawl, tall, but visible if you looked hard. Ridley narrowed his eyes. She looks wrong. Consumption, Mercer repeated. It hollers you out fast. Porter grabbed Ruth's arm, pulled her forward. The bonnet slipped back. Her face gray sunken, lips cracked, came into full light. Silence stretched. This ain't her, Porter said slowly. Mercer kept his face neutral. This is the woman I purchased. If she's not who you're looking for, that's not my concern. Porter's face darkened. Search it. They tore into the wagon, ripped canvas, dumped supplies, checked under the bench, probed every corner. Nothing. No hidden compartment. No, second woman. Porter stood in the road, papers crumpled in his fist. Where is she? I don't know what you're talking about, Mercer said calmly. This is the property from the auction. If she's defective, that's on the seller. Ridley crouched beside Ruth. She had sunk back onto the wagon bed, breathing wet and ragged. He studied her face, then the pillow, the too-thin frame. She's dying, he said quietly. Porter ignored him. Question her. He leaned close. Where's Clara? What did you do with her? Ruth lifted her head with visible effort. Her eyes focused on Porter, and then impossibly she smiled. Gone, she whispered. Beyond Duncan Fairholm's reach. She's free. Porter's hand shot out, grabbed her chin. Where? Ruth's smile widened. Blood flecked her, teeth laudanum already working. Lungs filling with fluid faster now. You can beat me, she rasped. Torture me. But I'll be dead before you get answers. I made sure of that. Porter understood in the same instant Ridley did. The bottle empty now rolled from her lap. Lauda numu. Oba dozi. Daddy bereto, you stupid woman, Porter snarled. Ruth laughed a wet, broken sound. You think this helps anyone? Duncan will find her eventually. He always does. Maybe, Ruth said. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Or maybe she disappears into a world where men like you and Duncan have no power. Maybe she lives to be old. Maybe her child grows up free. Maybe your whole system collapses and becomes a nightmare your descendants can't believe was real. Her breathing stuttered. Stopped. Started again with a rattle. I die knowing I helped destroy something. Duncan spent months building, she whispered. What will you die knowing, Mr. Porter? That you hunted human beings for money. That you served a system designed to crush souls. That you chose cruelty when you could have chosen mercy. She took one more breath shallow, defiant. Then she died. Eyes open. Smile frozen. Body slumped against the wagon side. Porter stared down at her for a full minute. No one moved. Finally he spoke, voice low. Bury her here. We tell Duncan we intercepted the wagon, but the woman died before we could question her. Mercer claims it was the one from auction. Trail's cold. One of the men protested. He'll know we failed. He'll know he was outmaneuvered, Porter said. But he can't prove it. No body, no confession, just a dead woman and a buyer who followed the law. They dug a shallow grave beside the road. No marker, no words, just another body returning to Louisiana dirt. Mercer watched, the burial without expression, when the men mounted and rode away. He stood alone beside the fresh-turned earth. He spoke her name 3 times, soft, deliberate. Ruth Chambers. Ruth Chambers. Ruth Chambers. Then he climbed back onto the wagon, turned the horse south, and vanished into the trees. Farther south, Claraara reached the Black Swan Tavern as dusk fell. Marcus met her at the door. Isaiah sent me, he nodded. Boat leaves New Orleans in 5 days. You'll be on it. She ate. She slept, and in the quiet hours before dawn, she placed one hand on her belly and whispered to the child inside. Your name will be Ruth, because some debts are paid forward, because one woman's final breath had bought them both a chance at tomorrow, and because Duncan Fairholm's perfect plan had just met the one thing he could never control. A woman who chose her own ending. The Black Swan Tavern faded into the dusk behind Claraara, like a memory she was already choosing to forget. Marcus had been efficient silent, no questions, just a nod and a small bundle. Dried meat, hard bread, a threadbare cloak, and a folded note with passwords for the next safe house in Natchez. Boat leaves New Orleans in 5 days, he'd said. Ask for Captain Duval. Tell him Ruth sent you. Ruth. The name settled in her chest like a stone dropped in still water. Claraara walked south through the night, keeping to the tree line, avoiding the main road where lanterns might catch her silhouette. The knife stayed in her hem. The leather pouch one, $150 in coins, hung heavy against her thigh. Every rustle in the underbrush made her freeze, hand on the blade, listening for hoofbeats. But no hoofbeats came. Duncan's men were north, chasing a ghost in a wagon. Ruth had made sure of that. Claraara did not cry. Tears were a luxury she had lost in Richmond at 15. Instead, she whispered to the child inside her small promises in the dark. You will know your name. You will know freedom. You will know a woman named Ruth who smiled as she died so you could live. She reached Natchez after 3 nights of careful movement, sleeping in hollow logs, drinking from streams, eating only enough to keep the baby strong. The safe house was a modest clapboard on the edge of the free black district. The woman who opened the door as to read the letter looked at Claraara's face and pulled her inside without a word. Captain Duval sails in 2 days, Esther said. You stay here. Rest. Eat. No one asks questions. Claraara slept on a pallet in the attic. For the first time in 8 years, she dreamed without fear dreams of a village she barely remembered, of her mother's hands braiding her hair, of William's voice reading poetry by candlelight in the overseer's cottage. She woke with tears on her cheeks and did not wipe them away. On the morning of the 5th day, Esther handed her a ticket and a change of clothes. Dress like a passenger. Duval knows to look for you. He'll get you to Veracruz. From there, disappear. Claraara boarded the steamer at dusk. The Mississippi rolled wide and brown beneath the paddle wheel. She stood at the rail, one hand on her belly, watching Louisiana slip away. No one questioned her. No one followed. The river carried her south, like it had carried so many before, some to chains, some to freedom. Veracruz welcomed her with salt air and Spanish voices. She found the community Mercer had described runaways from Louisiana, Cuba, Haiti living in the markets, on the docks, in small houses painted bright against the heat. She took work, mending sails, cooking for sailors, keeping her head down. The child came in late, autumn small, fierce, lungs strong from the first cry. Claraara named her Ruth. Years passed in quiet layers. 1870. A census taker in a small Illinois town far north of Louisiana knocked on a modest door. The woman who answered was tall, composed, skin the color of polished walnut, eyes steady and watchful. She gave her name as Claraara Freeman. No last name claimed from any man. Her daughter, 9 years old, stood beside her bride, named Ruth. The census taker wrote it down without question. Claraara Freeman never spoke of Bella, never spoke of Duncan, never spoke of the auction steps in Greensburg or the 12 copper pennies that had bought her life for $10. Instead, but she taught her daughter to read secretly at first, openly later. She taught her numbers. She taught her to look people in the eye and never lower her gaze for anyone. And every year on the anniversary of that March day, Claraara lit a single candle and told Ruth the story, not the full horror, but the part that mattered. There was a woman named Ruth Chambers, she would say. She was dying, but she chose her death so you and I could live. She smiled when she left this world. She smiled because she knew we would make it. Ruth listened. Ruth remembered Duncan Fairholm never stopped searching. He hired more catchers, raised the reward to $2,000, placed advertisements in papers from Mobile to Memphis. But the trail ended at a shallow grave beside a northern road. A woman who had died of consumption, buried without marker, identified by no one. He burned Bellomont's ledgers in a fit of rage one night in 1859. The war came. Union troops torched the fields in 1863. Duncan survived, barely losing land, wealth, wife. Margaret left him in 1865, took what little remained, and vanished north. He died alone in a mobile boarding house in 1872, bankrupt, bitter, whispering curses at a brother long dead and a woman he could never find. Silas. Guthrie was found face down in a ditch outside Greensburg in 1854. 6 inches of water. Ruled accidental drowning. No one asked questions. Judge Crenshaw died in 1861. Records sealed with him. Nathaniel Pute fled Louisiana ahead of Union forces in 1863. No trace after. The receipt 12 cents. Witnessed by 7 men stayed hidden in the courthouse wall until 1897. The historians who found it read the message on the back in William Fairholm's hand. My name is William Fairholm. I tried to save a woman I loved from my brother's cruelty. I failed her as I have failed in most things of importance. If you are reading this, know that the greatest evil is not the evil done by wicked men, but the evil permitted by good men who lacked the courage to act. I lacked that courage when it mattered. I pray you will not. They sealed it back in the wall. It surfaced again in 1998, preserved, this time placed in the Louisiana State Archives. Claraara's fate remains a question mark. Some say she lived out her days in Veracruz quiet, free, watching her daughter grow. Some say she reached Illinois, became Claraara Freeman, raised Ruth in a small house with a garden. Some say she died on the journey. Another name lost to the river. But the record is silent, and perhaps that silence is the victory. Duncan searched until his last breath and found nothing. His perfect plant-weld sense, a rigged auction, a brother poisoned, a woman delivered to torment caught. Only air. Ruth Chambers died, smiling. Claraara lived, somewhere, somehow beyond his reach. And somewhere, a child named Ruth grew up hearing the story of a woman who chose death so that freedom could live. The law called it property. The grave called it defiance. And history finale called it by name.